Welcome to Helena Housing Authority MDOC Housing Choice Voucher Program Briefing. In this briefing, you will learn about Helena Housing Authority office procedures and MDOC's role. You will learn how to use your voucher and its value. You will provide all required identification documents here. You will fill out all appropriate HUD, HHA, and MDOC paperwork. Please note any questions that you may have. Montana Department of Commerce and Helena Housing Authority. Helena Housing Authority provides the Housing Choice Voucher Specialist. They act as a field agent, do the briefings, do the lease-ups, client appointments, and client contact. MDOC houses the contract manager, which does the quality assurance, manages the wait list, issues the voucher, finalizes account additions and changes, and is responsible for the landlord payments. In the briefing packet that you have received, the contents include Montana Landlord and Tenant Act, Fair Housing, A Good Place to Live, Are You a Victim of Housing Discrimination, Protect Your Family from Lead-Based Paint in Your Home, and the Violence Against Women's Act. The initial voucher term will be 60 calendar days. The family must submit a request for tenancy approval within that 60-day period unless MDOC grants an extension. Extensions of the voucher term. Voucher holders are required to provide the local field agent with a request of extension of the voucher term in writing prior to the expiration of the initial voucher term. If approved, extensions will be granted for 30 days at a time with a maximum of 120 days total. MDOC will approve additional extensions only in the following circumstances. It is necessary as a reasonable accommodation for a person with disabilities, or it is necessary due to reasons beyond the family's control. Serious illness or death in the family. The contracted agency and/or MDOC may require the family to provide documentation to support the request in writing. Subsidy standards. The standards allow 2 persons per living sleeping room when determining voucher size. 0 bedroom, minimum amount of people is 1, maximum 2. 1 bedroom, minimum 1, maximum 3. 2 bedrooms, minimum 2, maximum 6. 3 bedrooms, minimum 3, maximum 8. 4 bedrooms, minimum 4, maximum 10. And 5 bedrooms, minimum 6, maximum number of people allowed is 12. Your payment standards are listed below in the following counties, which your voucher is good for: Broadwater, Jefferson, and Lewis and Clark County. Below is an example of the utility allowance that you will be using along with your rent. So if you're looking at a place, say a 2-bedroom, and in that 2-bedroom, you are responsible for the following utilities: heating, cooking, and water heating, other electric, water, sewer, and air conditioning. So you would take your numbers from over on the schedule, put them over on your worksheet, and your total utility allowances will be $132 based on this. If the asking rent is $500, your total gross rent will be $632. Your gross rent cannot exceed the payment standard for your area. If you are responsible for putting utilities in your name, per your landlord lease agreement, you will need to receive utility allowance adjustment off of your rent. We also use this utility allowance amount with your payment standard to figure out the amount of rent you should search for in a unit in the community. So payment standard examples. The first one will be the eligible payment standard that works. So if your payment standard is $1,378, the landlord is asking $1,000, and you filled out the utility schedule, giving you $126 from that schedule. Your gross rent will be $1,126, which is underneath that 1,378 payment standard. It is within the standard and it works. The second example is you still have the 1,378 payment standard. Your rent is $1,300. The utility allowance schedule is the 126, giving you a total rent of $1,426. This is over the payment standard by $48 and would not work without income. If you do have income, the unit would be able to work. We would just have to figure out and make sure that it's not exceeding the 40%. So important, we will only allow you to spend up to 40% of your adjusted gross income in the event that the unit you choose is over the payment standard. When you choose to lease a unit that is over the payment standard, sometimes this causes the family financial burden. Should your income decrease to zero, you would still be responsible to pay the amount over the payment standard. Below are two examples of rent. So if the tenant is not paying utilities, your annual gross income of $1,000, say, we times that by 30%, and $300 would be your tenant rent. Plus any dollars over the payment standard allowed up to 40%. If the tenant is paying utilities, you have your $1,000 annual gross income, times that by 30%, giving you that $300. And then we minus the utility allowance, which would equal the tenant rent. Below is a copy of what the request for tenancy approval page looks like. And after you've located a unit, the landlord has agreed to participate. You and the landlord must complete and sign all sections of the request for tenancy approval. Inspections. The Helena Housing Authority must conduct an inspection of the unit to ensure the unit is in decent, safe, and sanitary conditions and meet housing quality standards. If the unit fails to meet HQS, the landlord will be given notice to fix repairs, and HHA will re-inspect after the landlord has verified repairs are complete. A unit must completely pass HQS before a lease and contract will be executed. After the initial inspection, the unit will be inspected annually to determine the unit is still in compliance with HQS. Special inspection may be conducted throughout the year by a request from the tenant, landlord, Helena Housing Authority, and/or HUD. Once your unit passes inspection and you have submitted all of your verifications, the lease and contract will be initiated. The HUD lease addendum is attached to the landlord's lease. The addendum will contain the responsibilities of the landlord and the tenant. The addendum will supersede any portion of the landlord's lease that does not conform to HUD requirements. Family obligations. A family shall supply any documentation as the Helena Housing Authority determines to be necessary. Allow HHA to inspect the dwelling unit at reasonable times and after reasonable notice. Notify your landlord and Helena Housing Authority by giving a 30-day notice in writing before vacating the dwelling unit. Use the dwelling unit solely for residence by family as a principal place of residence. Notify Helena Housing Authority within 30 days of any changes in income, assets, or changes in family composition. Members of the household may engage in legal profit-making activities in the unit if such activities are incidental to the primary use of the unit. A family shall not engage in violent criminal activity, own or have interest in the dwelling unit, sublease the rental unit or transfer the lease, engage in drug-related criminal activity, commit any fraud in connection with the HCV program, receive duplicate assistance under the HCV program while occupying or receiving assistance for occupying any other unit assisted under any federal, state, or local housing assistance program. A person may not move any persons into the unit without prior written authorization from both the landlord and Helena Housing Authority. The family is responsible for any HQS breach caused by any of the following: having your utilities shut off or non-payment, the family fails to provide appliances that are to be provided by the tenant, or any member of the household or guest damages the dwelling or unit premises beyond ordinary wear or tear. If you are found to be in violation of any family obligations, your assistance could be terminated. Informal hearing. A request for an informal hearing must be made in writing and delivered to MDOC, either in person or by first-class mail, by the close of the business day, no later than 20 days from the date of MDOC's termination letter decision or notice to terminate assistance. The PHA must schedule and send written notice of the informal hearing to the family. The family may request to reschedule a hearing for good cause, or if it is needed as a reasonable accommodation for a person with disabilities. Good cause is defined as an unavoidable conflict which seriously affects the health, safety, or welfare of the family. Requests to reschedule a hearing must be made orally or in writing prior to the hearing date. At its discretion, MDOC may request documentation of the good cause prior to rescheduling the hearing. Annual recertifications, annual rent review, your household status including income, assets, and allowances, etc. must be recertified yearly to compute your tenant rent. You'll be notified 90 to 120 days in advance. HQS inspection, your unit must also be inspected at this time. In 2006, a system was implemented from HUD that reports to your employer in earnings by quarter. If you have a change of employment, you are required to report it to your caseworker in writing within 30 days. If we find that you owe money due to unreported income, you will lose your voucher. Since this was implemented, Helena Housing Authority has terminated over 20 vouchers due to the unreported income. If you owe more than $5,000, your file will be turned over to the OIG for a formal prosecution and could result in prison time or fines. So please make sure that you are reporting any income changes. So families are required to report all changes of income, assets, and change in family composition in writing within 30 days of the change. MDOC will not conduct interim increase in income except in the following instances. At the start and conclusion of the second 50% phase-in period of a family's earned income disallowance, if the family had previously been receiving zero income, if it had been determined that the calculation error had occurred or the calculation was based on incorrect or incomplete information, there is evidence or pattern that the family is manipulating the program by a pattern of reducing income just prior to the annual recertification and increasing its income right after. If it is discovered that a family has welfare sanction and the rent should not have been reduced and/or any regulatory error. To admit a family to the Family Sufficiency Program, when an FSS family requests an interim reexamination, any upward change in income will require an interim reexam if the change results in an increase of escrow account. When the family's total household income increases over 80% of the HUD's published area median income. Decreases of income. Participants are required to submit a written request for review of their rent calculation when they have a decrease in income and or other changes that would reduce the amount of tenant rent, such as an increase in allowances or deductions. MDOC will not process a reduction in family rent until it receives a written request and appropriate documentation of the changes. In hardship cases, MDOC may process the rent reduction based on the family's certification on MDOC income and family certification form and obtain verifications later. MDOC will review all family income and deductions to ensure that the interim rent reduction is correct and based on all current family information. When reporting decreases in income, the rent decrease will go into effect the following month. It may not be possible to decrease your rent for the following month if any changes are reported after the 15th of each month. Increases. An increase in the tenant rent will be effective the first day of the first month following the increased income. Protected classes covered by fair housing are race, color, national origin, disability, marital status, familial status, age, religion and/or creed, sexual orientation, gender identity. Toll-free number is 1-800-929-2611 or 457-0601. Fair housing complaint form included in your packet. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please get them to your housing specialist and they will be able to answer those for you.